than 25 years, 35 in the department of Ilm al-Adhiya, in the Unani medicine department, and that is pharmacology. And there is a engaged in PG, that is a PG institution also, and that is teaching PG and research work, and related with the also with the DRS program of UGC. So he has so many papers, and he has also served in Saudi Arabia more than 3 years, and he is also very much well aware of the Unani medicine, Unani pharmacology. So I think I'm very happy to listen. This is my
Okay, sir. Please.
Which are the keys for changing the slides? The keys for changing the slides. Okay. On this side or previous one? Okay, it's there. My respected teacher, Professor K.C. Singhal sir, chairperson of this session, Professor Abdul Latif sir, honorable delegates. I don't know whether we have some students also over here. It is indeed one's good luck that one is called upon to speak in a place where he was afraid to enter as a student. It has been my good fortune that I did my MD under the supervision of Professor K.C. Singhal sir and late Professor Om Chandra sir from this department. And it is even my greater fortune that I have the presence and blessings of my teacher for a long time, and on this occasion also. I apologize for whatever unpleasant behaviors I may have adopted towards my teachers with full sincerity, and I hope they'll forgive me for that, and they will really give their blessings to me and to other students. Professor K.C. Singhal sir has presented a very perceptive lecture, and it can be appreciated, its full value can be appreciated only if we remind ourselves that the traditional systems of medicine, including the Unani medicine, they are fundamentally different from Western medicine. Western medicine is a reductionist medicine, and all traditional medicines are holistic medicines. So it is indeed very difficult to correlate the two, which Professor K.C. Singhal sir has done with full accuracy, and he has then gone on to present it in a very articulate manner, which makes those things clear even to persons who have not been who have not had experience with traditional medicines. Now, I'll be speaking on this topic which is before you. So, coming right away to the point that what are the obstacles to rational Unani therapy? The most important obstacle to a rational Unani pharmacotherapeutics is a lack of user-friendly clinical guidelines. As far as Western medicine is concerned, the clinical guidelines are there, and they are available at increasing levels of lucidity and accessibility, from Cochrane reviews up to more simplified reviews in research journals, then further reviews in textbooks, then indexes, and so on and so forth. So there it's a matter of only following the guidelines, which as I submitted, are of increasing lucidity and of increasing user friendliness, right from the reviews, Cochrane reviews, and so on and so forth, and meta-analysis up to the indexes which are available. Such a counterpart does not exist in Unani medicine and in other traditional medicines also. This is not to say that there is no basis, there is no scientific basis for treatment. It's very much there, but it is not very accessible. The first thing which stands in the way for average Unani physician or a Unani physician who is just stepping into practice is the vastness of Unani literature. There are about a dozen very voluminous books on standard books on Unani medicine. The foremost is of course Al-Qanun, famous as the Canon, which was the textbook for medicine in Europe up to the 17th century, and it is a global standard text for Unani medicine. Then there are other books which Professor Singhal Saab pointed out, Razi's Kitab al-Havi, then Kamil Sana, so on and so forth. These are very voluminous books. Al-Qanun itself has got 5 volumes and full of very dense data and information, nothing redundant in it. Then there are hundreds of research journals, various noted Hakims or groups of Hakims. They had the practice of writing down their own experiences from clinical observation. These are known as Mujarrabat. Mujarrabat is the plural of Mujarrab, and Mujarrab means empirically tried. So there are hundreds, if not thousands, of these research journals, right from the medieval times up to at least the 20th century. In the beginning of the 20th century, Hakim Firozuddin, he set up a method for it. He presented certain treatments in his journal, and he wrote to hundreds of physicians, Unani physicians, and asked them to provide him their prescriptions. And then these prescriptions he published in his journal, and he again requested the rest of the Hakims to try these prescriptions and let him know about the results. And so the later editions of that book, Asrarul Atibba, the secrets of the physicians, the later editions, they included the Tasdeeq Nama and Takzeeb Nama, the confirmation and the refutation, depending upon the empirical experience of the Tabib. So this Mujarrabat literature is immense. So this is the vastness of Unani literature. Then another very big impediment to the understanding of the very effective Unani literature is the limitations of contemporary mentality and training. The contemporary mind has got a materialistic worldview, whereas all traditional medicines, they are based upon transmaterial schemes of physiology and pathology, where not only the body of man, but the vital level of man is taken into account. For instance, in Ayurveda, a man is described to be made up of 5 koshas, 5 sheaths. The body which we consider to be the totality of man is considered only as the one of those 5 koshas. That is the Annamay kosh. Then it is surrounded by the Pranamay kosh. Then comes the Manomay kosh. Then comes the Gyanmay kosh. Then comes the Anandamay kosh. So the man is the supramaterial levels of man are taken into account in all traditional texts. They are not only taken into account, they are the main referent, they are used as the main reference, because only at the supramaterial level man is a unified whole. At the physical level there is so much of differentiation, thousands of molecules. There cannot be holism if the main referent belongs to the physical level. So it is the supramaterial level, particularly the subtle level belonging to, if we use the Ayurvedic scheme, belonging to Pranamay kosh and Manomay kosh, that level, they are used as the main reference for approaching man, disease, as well as drug effect. So this is a tremendous obstacle to the proper understanding of Unani recommendations, the limitations of contemporary mentality. And then of course, very few of them are trained in what to talk of the classical languages, even in Urdu, because Unani literature is present in, the great part of Unani literature is present in Arabic, then Persian, and then Urdu. So now we have a situation that although still Urdu is the medium of instruction in Unani institutions, but students find it difficult to really understand. It's only by the time they pass out that they develop some proficiency in Urdu, and what to talk of Arabic and Persian. Then in the earlier times, basic instruction in basic philosophy was a part of the basic curriculum, which is nowhere there. These days, no one is taught about traditional philosophy or logic. So these are the limitations of contemporary mentality and training, which then comes the issue of insufficient personal apprenticeship. All traditional medicines, they are mainly based upon subjective diagnosis. For instance, all of us know that pulse is very important. Up to 50 years back, most of the physicians simply put their fingers on the pulse and they diagnose the disease. And by pulse, they did not only take into account the physical aspects like volume or rate. They could understand, they could feel some qualitative characters which are difficult to define in physical terms. So this helps us to appreciate that the traditional medicines are based upon subjective diagnosis, and subjective diagnosis requires a long period of personal apprenticeship. A student-mentor relationship in which the mentor puts his fingers on the patient's pulse and then asks the student to see it and says, this feeling is such and such pulse which indicates such and such disease. So these are the reasons why, despite there being a very effective literature, the Unani physicians, particularly those who are young and who are just starting their practice, they are not able to have the information which is needed for rational practice. So this problem has to be rectified. This requires that user-friendly Unani clinical guidelines have to be prepared, so that by the time this person becomes senior and he gets to understand the Unani philosophy and principles and a lot of voluminous facts also which are dispersed in hundreds of research journals. So till that time, his or her treatment is rational by virtue of having these user-friendly clinical guidelines. before we move ahead, we have to remind ourselves what are the USPs of traditional medicines. Traditional medicines have been preserved and they are supported even by the WHO at the global level now, only now, not earlier. Firstly, only for economical reasons, that these were the only healthcare which was available to a big part of the human population. But soon the WHO realized that these medicines have got something more precious to offer. So these days the WHO is recommending that traditional drugs should be tried for combating MDR tuberculosis, under the rational hypothesis that since the traditional medicines, they act at the level of immunity, they would complement the anti-infective therapy of Western medicine. And in India, India is the only country which has which has always supported and promoted the traditional medicines. China has also done it, but there's a big difference between China and India. China simply wants to milk the traditional medicines, in the process converting it into a natural product medicine. We already have a natural product medicine in allopathy, in Western medicine. We have a natural product medicine in which we isolate the so-called active principles and then use them as drugs or their analogs as drugs. So that's what is happening in China. But it is only in India that it has been clearly stated in the national health policy that all traditional systems must be used according to their genius, not only as a hen for getting the golden eggs and then using them in the context of Western medicine, but they should be developed according to their own genius. So India is the only country which has recognized that the power of traditional medicines does not lie in their natural drugs. It basically lies in their schemes, in their transmaterial schemes about physiology, pathology and treatment. Therein lies the power of traditional medicines. So it's only India. And well, political statements do not sit very well in an academic session, but one feels impelled to say that India is not in need of fake glories. It has got some very real glories. And one of these real glory of India is this recognition of the worth and value of traditional medicines, not only as things which solve the healthcare problems, but also as repositories of a very alternate and unique science which depends upon transmaterial levels. So the USP of traditional medicines is holism. Now that's quite well known. And this holism gives safety, it gives radical cure, and it also gives economy of treatment. Because by virtue of holism, subjective diagnosis becomes possible and then it becomes cheap. It does not depend upon instrumentation, it depends upon the skill, particularly subjective skills of a physician. So, but the question which has still not been asked adequately is, what is the basis of this holism, which Western medicine is unable to achieve despite its best efforts? So-called systems pharmacology and systems biology has not gone very far in bringing holistic treatments in Western medicine. The answer is, holism is there in traditional medicines because the traditional medicines are based upon transmaterial schemes of physiology and pharmacology. It is only at that level that man is a unified whole. So they do not ignore the symptoms, but they relate all the symptoms to the transmaterial roots. So this is, for instance, in Ayurveda, the pathology and physiology, the root of pathology and physiology is considered to be the doshas, the three doshas. and the drug effects are considered to be not due to molecules but due to rasas. Of course, it will correlate with molecules. If a drug is studied at the molecular level, it will show some effects. But the drug has got a rasa level also. And Ayurveda uses the drug by looking at the rasa level. Rasa level effects of the drugs, not the molecular level effects of the drugs. Similarly, in Unani medicine, the counterpart of rasas are the humors, khilt. As Professor K.C. Singhal Sahab has in detail presented the 4 humors. And the kafiyat of the drugs, the qualities, transmaterial qualities, hot, cold, dry and wet. Now these qualities, they are transmaterial. They are there at the sensory level also. But the same qualities pertain to the subtle level also. So subtle level derangements can be diagnosed by sensory, by apprehending the increase or decrease of hot or cold by sensory means. This is the ingenuity and this is the real, we can say, the uniqueness or wonderful thing which Unani medicine and all traditional medicines have to offer. So, the most important operational and practical conclusion is that the subjective diagnosis has to be retained and the whole plants have to be retained rather than going to purified extracts or even to the level of compounds. The whole plants should be retained. This is supported by some modern experiences also. When Ajmal Khan, when the protege of Hakim Ajmal Khan was asked to carry out chemical research, that is Dr. Salim-uz-Zaman, he isolated the alkaloids of ajmalin from astrol, which were later their sister alkaloid of reserpine was isolated following that line of research, and reserpine was used as the first specific antihypertensive drug. But after some time it had to be withdrawn because of very serious depression which it introduced. But astrol on the other hand is one of the drugs of depression. So this shows that the whole plant is safe, whereas the so-called active principles may have some power of efficacy, but there may be some safety problems. Very interestingly, in 1987, a conference was held in Hamdard University, where Srimal, I think he was the assistant director of CDRI in Lucknow, he presented a review, remarkable and very surprising review of the results of more than 1,000 herbal samples which were studied in CDRI. And the conclusions were that in 44% of the plants, the activity also went on decreasing as we progressed from the whole plant to the compound. In 44% of the samples, even the activity decreased. So this shows that it is not only that the whole plant will be safer than the active compounds, it's quite possible that in nearly half the cases the whole plant will be more effective than the individual compounds. So this is a very operational thing which we should be very clear, which we should at least never harm, rather we should support this, that the diagnosis should be subjective and whole plants should be used. In the light of the fact that the USP of traditional medicines is holism, and holism depends upon using the transmaterial schemes. It's difficult to bring the cursor at the bottom where my buttons lie. Can you please help me? Yes. Now comes the specific USP of Unani medicine among the traditional medicines. It is that Unani medicine is based upon an all-relating system. It has a system which relates all aspects of medicine: physiology, psychology, pathology, drug effect, and even environmental factors, the use of environmental factors, by referring them to these four basic qualities: hot, cold, dry, and wet. Psychology is also, physiology is also described in terms of these four qualities, psychology too, and pathology, as well as drug effect, as well as the effect of environmental factors. Everything is described on the basis of these four qualities. So it is an all-related system based on only four sensory qualities, and these qualities, although they are transmaterial, but they have a sensorial level also, so they can be felt directly by the physical senses. As a result, among the traditional medicines, Unani medicine is one of the most objective and easy traditional medicine. Let me make a self-deprecating remark. I also belong to that times. In these intuition challenge times, these are times when our intuitive powers have become, they have dwindled tremendously. So in these times when our intuitive powers are so much reduced, an all-related system based on only four sensory qualities, it can be seen that it will be one of the most easy traditional medicines to be adopted in these times. Other medicines will have their own advantages, but as far as ease of practice is concerned in these times, I think Unani has some advantage. Now we come to the basis of Unani clinical guidelines. It was submitted that the rational pharmacotherapeutics in Unani medicine, and in fact in all traditional medicines, requires user-friendly clinical guidelines. But as soon as we talk of guidelines, our mind immediately goes to research. That's not correct. These guidelines can be eminently produced. More than 85% of these guidelines can be produced by using the Unani texts, the available and existing Unani texts, and Ayurvedic texts, and so on and so forth. Why? Because the principles of Unani medicine as well as of Ayurveda, these are valid principles. And this is supported by the fact that their predictions work. If the prediction, that is science. We must have a testable hypothesis, which we can test. So the principles of Unani medicine, for instance, AIDS is a new disease, which is not described in Unani texts. So if the principles of Unani are applied to AIDS, first of all, AIDS is diagnosed as a disease in which the cold and dry has increased. So hot drugs would be useful. When on this analysis, when on the basis of this analysis, respective Unani drugs were used in cases of AIDS, good results were obtained. And not only this, a much more pervasive coming about of their predictions is in individualization. As Professor K.C. Singhal Sahab pointed out, that in Unani medicine, in all traditional medicines, one of their big strengths is individualization. So they individualize a prescription to a person on the basis of these schemes. Such and such person is of hot temperament. So in our drug, we should reduce the hot drugs and increase the cold drugs. And it works. This is a daily experience of Vaids and Hakims. This is important to note. These are very rational things which we have to wake up to, that since these predictions work, therefore these principles are correct. And the second important thing is that according to Unani methodology, in Nafisi, I'll try to wind up in 5 minutes. Nafisi, it's a book prepared in the 16th century. It's one of the commonly used commentaries on Al-Qanun of Ibn Sina. There in the opening pages itself, Nafisi mentions that although the treatment for a disease is hypothesized on the basis of mizaj, but it should be confirmed by actually giving the drug and observing whether it improves the disease or not. Without that, it is possible that a drug which is hypothesized a hot drug for a cold disease, it may not work. So then we have to hypothesize another hot drug, and until the time we confirm by clinical observation that drug X, hot drug X has worked in cold disease Y. Only then that particular drug will be considered and reported to be the disease, the drug for this particular disease. So it makes it very clear that in Unani medicine, the data has been clinically effective. It has been clinically observed. So there are validated claims which have been clinically tested. 5% of these guidelines, 5% of it would be provided by modern scientific literature. As far as the molecular mechanisms of drug effect are concerned, they won't be of much help in these guidelines because Unani medicine uses its drugs not on the basis of their molecular effects, rather on the basis of their four qualities: hot, cold, dry and wet. But the safety related data can be obtained for these guidelines from the modern scientific literature. If a plant is reported to have a toxic compound, then there should be a caveat on any formulation having that plant that it may be toxic in this way, since its such and such compound has been found to be toxic. So in this way, the modern scientific literature can also contribute to the preparation of these guidelines. And finally, of course, research. Clinical research should be carried out by using a dual protocol. Up to now, we are using only a Western medicine-based protocol, which does not integrate well into actual Unani healthcare. So we must use dual protocol. One protocol based on Western medicine, another protocol based on Unani medicine. Same patients analyzed in both ways, observed in both ways, analyzed in both ways. Western medicine protocol serves to convince the mainstream. The Unani-based protocol makes it more integratable in the Unani healthcare recommendations. Coming to the animal research, we know that we classify pharmacological actions into two types of actions: physiological actions and biochemical actions. Like analgesic action is a physiological action, but COX-2 inhibition is biochemical action. So it is the physiological pharmacological actions, physiological type of pharmacological actions which are more relevant to Unani drugs, because Unani drugs are described in terms of holistic actions. So we must devise animal studies by focusing mainly on the physiological type of pharmacological actions, and we should prefer in vivo tests for the same reason. And the findings of animal studies should be seen only as hypotheses, which have to be tested by clinical confirmation. Only then it should be included in guidelines, because it's possible that a drug may work in one way in animals, but it may work in another way in human beings, particularly when it has been processed in a particular way, that is Shodhan or Balbir, and when it has been mixed with other compounds. So thank you.